Welcome to the Modern Husbands Podcast, where every other week we host national thought leaders to discuss how spouses can partner to manage money in the home together to live happier lives. Today, we are thrilled to welcome Philip Olson, and the topic will be Philip's 2 cents on managing money in marriage. Now, you may know Philip and his wife Julia for their quirky, fun web series, 2 Cents. It is a weekly personal finance show on PBS aimed at millennials and Gen Z. Philip and Julia also founded The Art of Finance, an Austin-based financial services firm that helps clients in the creative industry. Today, you'll listen to how Philip and Julia manage their own money and home together. Enjoy. Phil, thanks for joining us today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Okay, let's first start by talking about 2 cents. That's probably how most people know you. So for our listeners, you can find 2 cents on PBS. Can you perhaps share to our listeners, what the show is about?
Yeah, so we say that 2 Cents is Sesame Street for adults. It is basically a financial literacy show, short form, 5 to 10 minutes long. My wife and I co-host and write most of the episodes of the show, and we explain Finance 101, kind of designed for people between their 20s and 30s. So getting a mortgage, your credit score, how stock market work, what's a Roth IRA, is the Social Security going to collapse, whatever, all the stuff you've ever wondered.
All those good things.
And a kind of, yeah, exactly. Very, very lighthearted, fun, animated way, lots of pictures, lots of metaphors. Our very first one, we talk about depreciation is like a melting ice cream cone, that kind of stuff, sort of that flavor.
Only someone with a CFP and a theater major could come up with something so creative. So before we dive into the details, I need to ask you, what are you more proud of, your CFP designation or your Emmy?
Definitely CFP. Easy question for sure. I had to work my booty off for that. I would still say it's the hardest thing I've ever done. And not everybody says that. Some people are better students than me. I had a stack of literally 1,000 flashcards by the end, which I had memorized stone cold, front and back. I mean, stone cold. And it was still very hard. They don't give you a score, but I bet I got a low B or a high C, just based off my practice tests. Super, super hard, like 7.5 hours in the testing room. I had to drive to Lubbock. It was traumatic. The Emmy, they just surprised us. They're just like, we didn't even know we were submitted. There's a picture of one of the producers of PBS holding this at the Emmy Awards. And they're like, this is yours. I was like, huh? I didn't go. I didn't know I was nominated.
Oh, wow. I know the feeling, though. I was the runner-up in the 4th grade classroom spelling bee. And I remember vividly the excitement and the energy that
Does
came
that still
from
haunt
that.
you that you were the runner-up?
It does. The problem was I wrote down the wrong definition on my flashcards. There were 7 of them, and I just got it wrong.
You sabotaged yourself. See, that's a metaphor for life right there.
Brian, I don't think that is exactly the same level as an Emmy.
Maybe it's a little short.
The trauma is probably deeper, if we're honest.
For the longest time, Brian's name on Zoom was Brain Page.
And you all just let this happen, huh?
Yeah.
Just let this keep going.
So that's why he was a runner-up and not the winner of the spelling bee. What? Can't spell his own name.
Philip, can you tell us a little bit about your family and how things roll, together in partnership?
We have a little family. It's myself, my wife, and co-business owner and best friend Julia, and our one daughter Clementine. She's 4. Yeah, we live in the outskirts of Austin. We run our financial planning firm, a fee-only firm that caters to small business owners and artists called The Art of Finance. We've been running it about 7 years. Together as partners, we also have 4 employees who are all remote. I'm in my office / one of my guest bedrooms right now. Let's see. So Julia and I, we met in college, theater degrees, both of us at University of Texas. Very broke, young, and scrappy. Our marriage and our story has evolved greatly for us now to be financial professionals running a firm of our own, and it's great. It's been really wonderful. We've found a way to use both our creative backgrounds as well as our interest in business to kind of build a life together. So we're together a lot. We are co-parents. We are romantic partners. We are business owners. We are TV show hosts, all together all the time. So big part of our kind of self-care and just sort of way to make our family work well is, number one, a lot of couples counseling. We've been in couples counseling for 12 years. as mostly preventative maintenance.
Mhm.
And we also have very intentional breaks from each other. We'll take trips without the other one, so we get a little bit of just oxygen. I was actually just in Houston visiting my father-in-law, and she stayed here, and I was texting her about something funny, and she's like, actually, could we have a text break for this trip so that we'll have some stories to share when I get back? So our life is kind of
Oh.
unusual in that way, but it's very, very good. Couldn't
That's
ask
a
for
great
Yeah.
idea. Where did you get the idea to do couples therapy as a preventative measure?
That's a great question. So we got into couples therapy as most people get into any type of therapy, which was we were in crisis early in our marriage. We were having problems with in-laws and lots of stress with your mom, my dad, blah, blah, blah. We don't know what to do. Went into treating it like an emergency room, which unfortunately I think is how most people think of therapy. Got the problem resolved fairly soon, and we're like, this actually feels pretty good. Like maybe we'll come work on some smaller things. And we kept going. At a certain point, we're like, we just keep coming back. We enjoy it, helps us communicate better, helps us, be more emotionally mature. And then we kind of realized that, oh, actually, a lot of people do this. A lot of people treat therapy as a way to stay healthy, more like we don't go every day, of course, but maybe once or twice a month to, root up issues and troubleshoot sticky stuff. And yeah, it's something I would recommend to anybody. We have lots of people who come to us for the art of finance, who we say lovingly, you need a therapist. You don't need a financial planner, at least first, because y'all are not in partnership, period. And so we're not going to be able to help you very much. We recommend therapists a lot, for sure.
Super interesting. You ever hear, if you listen to podcasts, you hear ads for these like mental health apps and counseling apps, and the marketing, phraseology that they use, the verbiage is all about, to your point, like maintenance, like preventative care. You wouldn't drive your car 300,000 miles without a couple oil changes at least along the way. But I've never heard that from someone who's actually like experienced it. So
yeah, I'm not selling it necessarily.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, it seems like therapy is incredibly stigmatized, I believe. I still, to this day, when I tell somebody, I've spent 12 years and probably $10,000 to $20,000 on therapy in my life, and it's the best investment I've ever made, they're very, very, skeptical. And also like, and when I recommend it to people, it's almost like you're really, really broken is what they hear, unfortunately, which is of course not what I mean at all. And it's so strange that we categorize mental health that way, because like just like the assumption is you should just be strong enough, like you're smart enough, like you should be able to just do this on your own, like you don't need the crutch of a therapist. But it's like, would you say that if you had a broken bone? Like, would you say this like just for your, like, I'm so healthy, I don't need to exercise, I'm in such good shape, I don't need to lift weights or watch what I eat because I'm just so healthy? Like, that's just insane. The way you get healthy is by doing that stuff. And yet for our mental health, it's like that gets a pass. And so what happens? Our society is plagued by mental health. I mean, mental health crises are everywhere. Everybody's got them. It just makes no sense to me. It should be, I think it should be like a public good that everybody gets.
Yeah, it's a paradigm shift that needs to happen. And I'm really honored to be able to work with folks like you three on the call who are helping to make that paradigm shift happen. There are a couple that Modern Husbands as an organization focuses on. One of them is this idea of kind of equal division of labor within the house. Or within a family, within a partnership. So we'd love to hear about your experiences, in that realm. How do you divide things up? How do you communicate with one another?
Gosh, there's so many angles I could take that. We could talk about chores. We could talk about each other's careers. We could talk about parenting. I'll go shallow, then I'll go a little deeper. So for shallow, I'll say, like, I think communicating early and often and aggressively about delineation of work and responsibilities is definitely the way to go. So for us, for example, we'd kind of always sort of split the chores, but what would happen is, as it happens with most partners, is resentment will build up. You're not doing that thing as much, and you never help me with this, and blah, blah, blah. And a couple of years ago, we will always kind of like revisit this maybe every 5 years of like, let's write down what everybody's doing to make sure it's fair, basically. And so we started doing this just to make sure we had a fair delineation. And through that, Julia at one point said, if I never, ever had to clean the kitchen ever again, it would be the happiest news I could ever receive. I was like, So I don't love cleaning the kitchen, but I don't hate it nearly as much as her. But I do hate folding laundry. I do hate picking up dog poop. Like, there is stuff I do hate. And I was like, how about this? Let's see how much time it takes. And it ended up turning out that basically all of the kitchen work combined in a week was about the exact same amount of time as all of the other chores combined as well, because kitchen every day, multiple times a day, clean it up multiple times.
Always dirty.
A meal prep, the kids always making a mess or stuff on the floor, scrub down the oven, whatever. So I was like, how about this? How about I do everything in the kitchen? You don't have to lift a finger. You just like finish eating your sandwiches, drop it on the ground. Fortunately, she doesn't do that, but it's just like, you just be an absolute barbarian in the kitchen. I will clean it up every day, perfectly clean. And I will do no other chores at all. And she's like, done. Like, she didn't have to think about it. Mwah, mwah, been perfect. So it's very much about like, what do we prefer to do? I like being in the kitchen. Cleaning is the less fun part, but I love to cook. I love to eat. I love the smells. I love the physicality. So it's like, just pop in my ear pods, listen to a podcast or two. And that's just sort of like my deal. I'll spend an hour to an hour and a half, you know, working in the kitchen, cleaning almost every day. And I don't have to do anything else. So that's sort of the delineation of labor thought, I guess.
What I see in that, though, is there was some amazing communication between you and your wife, right? About your likes, dislikes. And there was that communication about having a balance of what I can do to support each other.
So like maybe a little deeper, like how do we support each other? Maybe like talking about professionally or like what we want to do with our lives. We've had this really it's just such a sweet dynamic and story to me over our lives of basically like, you know, I'm a biker, like who's at the front and who's taking the drag and working hard and who's drafting off them. And it's easy for them. Like it's a huge difference in how hard it is on your legs if you're in front or in back on a bike, road bike. Over our career, we didn't even think to do this intentionally, but I would say like 5, 6, maybe 7 times we've shifted and said, who's the sugar daddy or sugar mama? So one of us has a job and the other one is pursuing some kind of dream they've got. Julia has started a vintage online resale business on Etsy. She had a professional organization business. She entered into the mortgage industry, making very, very little money at the front. I had various kind of dead-end jobs in the food service industry and then became an acting teacher for several years and tried to start my own acting thing and it didn't work. Then I went into financial services, which anybody who's ever tipped their toe in that, you make no money at all at the beginning, like none. And I did that 3 times. So the first time I started and it was all sales and I made no money at first trying to pass my tests. And then I shifted to another firm and I had to start all over again. And then I started my own firm and had to start all over again. Every single time Julia held down the W-2. And then eventually I eclipsed her because that's the whole hope and dream of entrepreneurship is you get underpaid at the beginning to get overpaid at the end. And as I eclipsed her, I was like, come join me. Let's do this. And it wasn't perfect at first. Like she basically came over and automatically fell into the role of my secretary, which isn't ideal. Would not recommend that usually for egalitarian partners. But eventually we got some help from a business coach, helped us find our own lanes. And so we really are the co-owners, co-runners, and like co-CEOs of the company, just in sort of different departments, I suppose. We each have essentially half of the departments we lead and come together on. So that's that's how I kind of think of supporting and like, it's okay. It's okay to have somebody kind of hold the flame as you go out and take a risk and make no money.
That's a great story. And that's actually a common thread that we're finding when we have conversations with other couples that like there's this idea that a man is always the breadwinner, or let's say that a woman is the breadwinner in the house. And it's like this concrete thing. And that is just not what we're finding. It's constantly like back and forth, people just kind of taking turns and just making decisions practically based on whatever those circumstances may be. So I'm glad you
not even necessarily gender roles. Like as I speak to like millennials and Zoomers, like it's less about that and more that like one person just gets stuck in the breadwinner role, regardless of gender. Just like this person makes more money because they're an engineer or because they work at Google or whatever. And like when I hear that you've been the breadwinner for 25 years and this person's off, you know, following their folly and painting and starting businesses that never go anywhere and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, that sounds exhausting. Like that doesn't sound fair to me. Now you're doing your own thing and live your life, but like, I wouldn't want that. The fact that we basically have swapped off like who's dragging and who is drafting like every several years, I think it's been a really wonderful kind of gift and dynamic to each other.
Kind of shifting, we also like to talk about kind of what are those educational things that our listeners need to know as well. And so kind of recognizing that you're the CEO of The Art of Finance and a CFP, can you explain to our listeners what exactly is a fiduciary standard and why is it so important for investors, for clients to make sure that they're getting that level of support, that standard of professionalism if they're looking for someone to work with.
Fiduciary standard is the contractual commitment and agreement to put the client's needs above your own, put them first. Seems so incredibly obvious. That is
Seems
not
obvious.
standard.
That's what you want.
That's what anyone would assume. That is not the industry standard in financial services. Full stop. Not the standard. You go into a bank? No, no, no. You go into Fidelity? No, no. You go into Edward Jones? No, no, no. That is not the standard at all. Is it shifting that way? Yes, but the industry does not have a financial stake in doing that. It's better for the industry to sell folks the highest commission products, the products with the highest profit. It is capitalism after all. Unfortunately, if you don't see fiduciary just, tattooed all over the face of the person you're talking to, they aren't one. That is not something you hide. And vice versa. So yeah, we're fiduciaries, obviously, little softball there, but that's not to say someone who doesn't meet the fiduciary standard is out to screw you. It's just that they have a bit of a conflict of interest, and they don't have to put your interest first, which seems like, why would anyone ever work with that type of person? I don't know.
So for our listeners, I want to provide just like an example or two so they understand the impact of the difference between a fiduciary and suitability standard. The last statistic I saw was that around 90% of financial planners do not have to adhere to the fiduciary standard. They adhere to the suitability standard, meaning they can sell you something suitable, but not necessarily in your best interest. So
and suitable,
let's say
suitable doesn't mean anything at all. Really.
Right.
Yeah.
What is suitable for me? Almost any.
Whatever you decide is
financial
suitable
advice
is suitable.
Is
yes.
suitable. Yeah.
Natural
So-
ingredients.
So let's say you have investment A, which is, I'm just going to make something up, no fee index fund, low fee index fund, and then investment B is an annuity, and you pay just 2% a year to the person who sold you the annuity, or however that works out. What's the difference over time of just that 2% between a low no fee product and something like an annuity at 2%?
What's the difference? Well,
Yeah.
2% per year compounded. I'm not sure what you're asking.
Like how much though does that add up to over time? Let's say somebody is investing over 30 years, 40 years. Like what does that compound to look like? Is that a big difference?
Oh yeah, of course. Leading question, leading the witness, but yes, definitely for sure. Even 1%, even a fraction of a percent. It's so situation dependent, but I would say kind of anecdotally, a normal situation is if you looked at someone whose investments were averaging, 9% per year annually versus 7% annually over a lifetime is literally hundreds of thousands of dollars, easily hundreds of thousands of dollars. Huge. Compound interest is scary, scary, powerful if you give it a chance. So yeah, big time. Also, 2% is quite modest for an annuity fee. When I sold annuities at my very first financial services job and didn't know up from down or what the heck I was doing, we had a 7% front end load, not even mentioning the trail fees on it. That wasn't even close to the highest commission product that we could sell. So yeah, it's crazy, even if it was as modest as you're pointing out. But like, for example, whole life insurance, variable life insurance, and universal life insurance are, I think, the most egregious sins in this space. They are sold as investments, but they're very, very poor investments. When folks look closely at them, fiduciaries never sell these because they would never meet a fiduciary standard. However, they're sold very aggressively. I meet people practically every week who's like, hey, my brother-in-law, hey, my banker, whatever, was saying that this life insurance investment would be good for me. Then it's suitable because it is technically an investment, but the average return on these investments, Consumer Reports has done multiple studies on these, is basically 0% on average. Zero. You're basically making nothing compared to like 8 to 10% in the stock market. This is, truly millions of dollars if you had invested completely in A versus completely in B. This is just villainous, in my opinion. So there's obviously, degrees. And, full disclosure, I used to sell this stuff. I didn't really realize this till a couple of years in and actually stopped drinking the Kool-Aid and look closer. But as an investor, as a consumer, you should always make sure that who you're working with is a fiduciary and meets the fiduciary standard. Not just financial advisors, tax professionals, legal professionals, all the above.
Well, I think you raise a good point though too, is that we know this, as people in this world, but lots of times clients don't know that. And when they get in front of a advisor that's saying, well, this is going to be great for you, and they're showing you these charts, they're showing these figures. If you don't understand those, Or if you're not up to date with what's going on, then yeah, it's a lot more complicated. But I think your point to, well, if they have the fiduciary standard, if you're asking for that, they have that in the writing in the contract, then you know you're good. Right?
I totally agree. So the best advice I can give to consumers out there trying to just make their best decision about who to work with and what products to use and so forth is the second you start to think you found a shortcut or a hack, go seek out someone who will dismantle that. Try. If you think crypto is the next big thing, you're gonna make a millionaire, have someone try to argue you out of it. I have people come to me almost every week who say, hey, this life insurance, this annuity thing, this crypto thing seems really, really good, but I have a little thing in the back of my head. I want you as someone who's not going to sell me anything and is a fiduciary, what do you think? And to me, this is just like super, super candy from a baby. It's like asking a realtor if you should buy a house. Like this is so easy of an answer to where it's like almost not even fun anymore. It's like I'm just beating up like someone who's not fighting back. But yeah, it needs to be beaten up. Like it needs it. Like it's definitely still winning the war, unfortunately. So I'm happy to do it.
Obviously, our goal is to help listeners manage money with their partners, with their spouses. You know, you and your wife and your Julia are experts. So how do you manage money as partners?
So UniBudget, it gives us a shared language. It gives us concrete numbers as opposed to stuff in our heads. It gives you a system with which to roll with the punches when things don't go as you expected, the ability to plan. It has basically eliminated our money fights completely 10 years ago. It does for almost everybody. Life changer. Now, it has a little bit of a learning curve, as I warn everybody. So I couldn't just tell you to go and get, I don't know, QuickBooks or I don't know, some high-end like Adobe video editing software, After Effects, and just be like, just go get that. You'll be good. Like you're going to feel overwhelmed. There's way too much going on. You think you know what you're doing, then you do it badly, then you get frustrated. So they have free online courses that you can actually just like, you know, not even courses, like classes taught by people live every single day. I recommend people do that. If they really want handholding, one of the services we actually offered at request of our clients was to just like hold their hand through the process. We have a whole process called Foundations. We have 4 coaches teaching this in our company who are like teaching folks how to use YNAB well, which is crazy. They have their own learning tools, but this is very much like, do you want to like, you know, basically have I don't know, a personal trainer on your finances, and we offer that. So that's the biggest thing. UniBudget, life changer. Everyone should have it. The second one, I would say, you know, so the question was kind of like just managing our money together. We talk about it a lot. This is not something we keep secret or hide. People that keep their finances totally separate from their spouse is very hard for me to understand. I don't want to judge them, but that's just not how I work. That's not how I think. We're a partnership. How do you run a company if the CFO and CEO like don't know how much money is there? Like that is very hard for me to understand. So we're very much partners. We very much work together. And we just try to be egalitarian. We try to be fair. You know, if she's getting something that's indulgent, I get something indulgent. If she is needing self-care, we make sure there's time for self-care in there for me. One of the biggest hacks we learned, I want to say this is a Dave Ramsey thing, but I might be making that up, is the importance of fund money, my fund money, her fund money being the same amount every month, and that it's not use it or lose it, that it carries over. So I'm not kind of a rapid spender. I won't really spend the money I get until whatever, 12 months later, I'll buy myself a really nice road bike or a guitar or whatever, which I couldn't do with a tiny allowance. And Julia loves to go thrifting, loves to buy books, loves to get gifts for her friends, and just she wants to splurge on some flowers for herself or whatever. That's been huge to allow autonomy and freedom within the budget to like, I don't have to stress about buying my friends a round of beers. But it's not just a free for all to where it's just like blank check. I think that causes more stress.
Yeah, that's great advice.
It's great. It is great advice. So outside of what you and your wife are doing, I guess, and it does sounds fantastic, to be honest. Do you have any other tips for our listeners to manage money with their spouses?
So a couple things that jump out for me would be, I think it's really important to have what we call a budget committee meeting every month.
Okay.
Every month.
Yeah, that's great.
We sit down and we talk about our finances absolutely every month, no exceptions. We've done this for 10 years. Maybe even longer. We were doing.
Do you have a date? Do you have like
well, we do it like
25th of every month,
1 or 2 days of the first. So UniBudget is very much focused on the calendar month.
Okay.
And so it all flips over on the 1st. And so within 2 days before or 2 days after, and if it's like the 3rd, one of us is like, we need to have our budget committee meeting like now. It's usually only 15 to 30 minutes at this point. It's very easy. If you have a budgeting framework, I think it makes it even easier. But even if you don't, I mean, we can circle back on like what's coming up this month. What kind of goals do we have? What kind of things have I been thinking about that I maybe haven't told you, that like, I want to do that thing in the yard, or your mom's coming in, or this thing's too expensive to afford, but I really want to fix the bumper on our car. And like, could we start saving for it? I think if you don't do that, it's just like the therapy thing. Like you just start to like have build up and break down, and like, you don't even know where it stinks, like resentment. And I mean, obviously we're talking about marriage, like finances are the #1 cause of divorce. And like, this is a huge part of it. It's like resentment, distrust, so forth. So the frequency, I would say, like, that's the biggest thing I would say, is talk about your money together. It's really tempting for one person to kind of be like the money parent, money mom, or money dad. I'm not a big fan of that. Very common dynamic. So like, I'm the CFP, I should be in charge. But I think it's a better goal to work towards instead would be, it's okay if one person is what we call the mechanic. Like, they balance the budget, they look at the activity, maybe they even update the spreadsheet, but we have to make every decision together with equal amounts of informed consent, not just like, here's what I proposed. Will you approve it? Great. That is not really the best way to do it. It's rather like, what concerns or questions do you have? Here's the concerns and questions I have. What do we want to work towards? What can we do? What can't we do? Maybe there's some compromise, and we're having a discussion as peers. We have to both have equal say and equal input, although one person can be the more technically proficient person. It's usually whoever likes to do this better is who ends up doing that.
What a brilliant way to describe the difference between controlling and managing money, right? I mean, you two control money together. It's a partnership, but the management of it, you're really just the mechanic, right? You don't necessarily have to control the money to be the mechanic. What you're saying, we continue to hear here again and again, is something that is most important in a marriage. We like to leave the podcast with like one simple, easy tip about money, because we want to make our listeners smarter about money. So it could be something you already said, and that's okay. But if you want our listeners to walk away and remember like one single thing, what would it be?
I mean, obviously Dogecoin, but like, I'll give you a better one than that.
Ride it to the moon, right?
HODL. I want to be really thoughtful about this. Let me think here. Okay, I got one. Different than anything I've said before. I'll give you a tiny bit of setup, and then I'll give you the actual recommendation. So we look at people's budgets. I mean, in the hundreds, in the thousands of people's budgets and their stories. And one of the most common, if not universal, theme is people tend to be absolutely horrified by how much they spend eating out, like to a person. It's like, they're the first ones to have discovered it too. Every time they're like, I can't believe, what if my friends knew? I'm like, oh, your friends are doing it too. Absolutely mortification, followed by like just grief and mourning about what a horrible person they are, followed by I need to try better, followed by thoughtfulness and intentionality.
Like the stages of grief.
Absolutely. Acceptance and then growth is where we eventually get here, which is why I'm such a huge fan of budgeting. It forces you to look at this every month. So the one tip I would have, if you didn't do anything I talked about at all in this call, or anything at all, period, I think the best thing you can do for your finances, if you're not already, is to count out how much you spent in eating out last month, and do this every month. I think this will change your life more than anything I could tell you right now. It will, the fruits are almost too many to count, but you will become a better saver. You'll become just more intentional with money generally. You will pick the sweetest possible, most impactful spot to start your budgeting journey. You will be less wasteful. You will enjoy eating out more. There's just a crazy amount of good things that come from this. So
I have to say, my wife and I went through that, and what ignited that problem wasn't necessarily Hope and I. It's that we have 3 kids. They're very active. And frankly, they're constantly begging to eat out. Now I do the cooking, so I don't, I kind of take that as a slap in the face. But
you want better food than dad's food.
But what we just decided to do is they have an allowance. We look at it as allowance as a tool to teach them how to manage money. And we just told them, hey, you get your allowance biweekly, and we're going to add $10 to it. Mm-hmm. And here's the deal. We always are eating in. And if you want to eat out, no problem. You don't have to ask us, just go do it. That's what the allowance is for. But don't ask us again. And it's like liberated us from the pressure of our teenage children constantly asking.
I love that.
Phil, this was really fun. I can't say enough great things. The Art of Finance, great company. If you haven't seen 2 Cents on PBS, I can't say enough great things about it. We're going to make sure to show both in the podcast notes, and please go in and have a look at some of those videos.
Well, thank you guys. Our conversations with Brian are always awesome. You can always hit me up. I will always say yes.
Christian, Dr. Ross, and I thank our listeners and our guest. Please be sure to go to modernhusbands.com, where you can subscribe to our podcast. You can listen to our podcast in whatever platform you prefer: Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, or even on YouTube. Until next time, be well.